Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this sunny Friday. Well, at least sunny here where I am in Berkshire. We're just waiting for a few more people to filter in. But if you have joined us, please turn your camera on. We'd love to see your faces. Open up the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. And we will get going as we have 90 minutes and lots to discuss today. So we're so glad you could join us today. This is session 3 in our Careers in AI series, Navigating the Future. So if you've been with us from the start, welcome back. And I see some familiar names and faces, which is great. Thank you for coming back again. But if this is your first session, you've arrived at a particularly important point. We're going to talk today about the future of recruitment and AI and talent acquisition. Now, I've said this at the start of each one of these sessions so far, AI is not a distant concept. It's already changing how we find jobs, how we're evaluated, how we're interviewed. Arguably, it's been a part of the hiring process for a while now. But is this shift making hiring smarter or fairer or faster or more inclusive? Or are we giving away too much of that human judgment piece to the bots or the machines? That's what we want to talk about today. So we're going to dive into some of those questions. We're going to talk about AI-powered screening tools, predictive hiring algorithms. We're going to unpack what's really happening behind the scenes and what it means for us, for job seekers, for recruiters, for business leaders. What does that hiring process look like in the age of AI? And this series is all about helping you stay informed with these transitions, these changes, and empowered in today's AI-driven world. So we've talked about so far how AI is reshaping parts of the career journey from pathways to progression. And later on in this series, we're going to talk about leadership and resilience. So whether you're skeptical of what's happening out there or an AI enthusiast, we're hoping these conversations help you challenge your assumptions, give you some practical insights to help you take control of your career. Hosting us once again is Dr. Toby Velt, LBS alum, AI entrepreneur, educator, business founder. Toby's career spanned Google, AWS, Microsoft, and now executive education at London Business School. We're privileged to have him leading us through these conversations because he's so front and center at helping leaders think about AI. And his goal in building this series with me was simple. We wanted to create a space for these conversations to happen about AI's impact on work and for everyone, not just the tech elites or those that are very techie already. Joining us today and joining Toby today in this conversation is guest expert Andrew McCaskill. Some of you may recognize him. He's been a supporter of the Alumni Career Centre for a few years now. We're delighted to have him with us. He is a leader in talent strategy and career transformation. He brings a fresh and candid perspective on the evolution of hiring, especially in this age of automation and algorithmic decision making. We're so happy to have you with us, Andrew. And Toby, I'm going to hand over to you because we really want to make best use of these 90 minutes. Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you again, Morag, for pulling this all together for all of us. Absolutely amazing. And correct, this is our third of 5.
Third of 5.
Sessions. Yeah, so we are right in the middle of things, and it's been a fascinating ride, and I am privileged to be your tour guide on this journey, and love the input and the questions from all the folks that have joined. We're certainly going to appreciate more of that. All right, and today, we are switching gears a little bit. We're taking a different point of view of this subject, more from the recruiter side and the TA or talent acquisition process, which can be very specific. As employers and as employees, we've all experienced one or both sides of this. So let me turn it over to Andrew, and we're going to get an introduction from Andrew, and then we're going to get some initial thoughts and kick it off. Andrew.
Yeah, thank you very much, Toby. Hello, everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces and meet some new people as well. So thanks for having me. As Toby said, I'm Andrew. My mission for the last 20 years has been to end career-based misery. And that mission has led to me spending a lot of time coaching folks in transition and trying to work out the best ways of them securing roles, and also coaching organizations and how to hire more effectively. So I'm an author and a content creator in this space, and the current chief commercial officer at a global life science talent consultancy called Fraser Dove. So that's the work we've been doing. This topic is fascinating for me. And what I'm hoping today will go some way towards is moving me, and hopefully some of you as well, from scared which is kind of where I'm at the moment, to prepared, and reducing some of the fear around what's happening and getting practical around what's actually going on in the recruitment ecosystem and the role that AI is going to play in all of our careers when either hiring or looking to get hired. So just to frame that, I guess we'll talk about the potential good and then some of the potential challenges. The potential good out of all of this, and by the way, I've been down some serious rabbit holes during the last couple of weeks in preparation for this discussion because, unlike Toby, I'm not an AI expert. And I really wanted to try and interpret everything that was going on so that I could share some of that with you today. The positive element that I can see that is coming out of AI within talent acquisition already, but also as we move into the future, is that most people on this call would probably agree with me when I say that traditional recruitment is broken. It's a multi-billion industry that delivers a service that candidates hate, customers hate, and most recruiters, if they're honest, hate as well. That's the current status quo, right? So we have a broken industry. And what I think technology is giving us the opportunity to do is more than just replace some of the existing broken recruitment processes with technology. It's actually getting us to think broader about how do we fix this broken hiring equation in the first place, and how do we leverage AI in order to get better outcomes and better experiences for everyone. And really, I think, what's kept, talent acquisition broken for a long time has been measuring the wrong things. So most talent acquisition teams are focused on cost per hire and time per hire. They're the two metrics that drive talent acquisition activities. And I think with AI coming in, we have a real opportunity to think bigger than that and to move towards looking at quality of hire as a really core thing that we're measuring and achieving through tech stacks. So that's the kind of positive lens. Just to frame, and obviously we're going to go into a lot of more detail on this, but to frame some of my concerns and why I'm somewhat scared about some of this, part of what I believe is core to the mission of ending career-based misery is to get the human back into human resources. I feel like the human elements of our working lives have dissipated. Remote working, the post-pandemic world, everything that we know about that's going on, even calling people human resources or human capital, as it's quite often now referred to, feels very dehumanized. And what I'm hoping is that technology isn't going to further add to that problem and dehumanize further. And some of the things that I've looked at feel like a move in that direction. And I think we need to be very careful about that. So I'll pause there, Toby, and come back to you, but hopefully that frames some of the things that are going on.
Yes, thank you for setting that up. And I love the concept, and we all feel like it's broken. I think anybody who's experienced this recently is like, this doesn't, something has happened. And the way we've seen it is the technology has made it quite easy to apply for roles. And then they're set into motion an arms race of AI. So you've got the recruiter that says, okay, fine, that's the way you're going to play. Then I'm going to evaluate applications using AI. Candidate says, all right, fine, you're going to use AI to evaluate. I'm going to take your job description, put it into an AI system and create a cover letter and a CV that exactly matches what you want. And I've heard these stories that for jobs now, hundreds, and in the case of Netflix, like 50,000 people. You could be custodial work, 50,000 applicants for every job. And then all of a sudden on the other side, the recruiter's like, well, I can't, as a human, I can't look at, so now I'm going to, and it thus begins the process of, then they say, well, does anybody here know anybody that can do this job? Your cousin? Great, they're hired, and then, which is broken. That's not the best candidate in all likelihood for the role. And so then what has happened is technology has created this environment where it's made it more analog, like it was pre-technology. Like you mentioned before, Andrew, that if somebody wants to stand out, they do a handwritten letter. If somebody needs to get the job, it has to be through a weak connection, a human connection, a network. Again, not the best candidate. So the whole thing is dysfunctional. How do you see the arms race ending?
Well, I think it's going to get worse before it does end. So particularly on the job seeker side, executive job seeker sides, there are a number of startups currently in play, mainly West Coast US businesses who you can subscribe to manage your job search outreach for you. So you can upload your resume and you can upload your job preferences, and this technology will scan the internet on the daily, apply for anything that looks like a fit to who you are and what you're looking for, and even tailor your CV and application into that particular job. Now, if this gets mass adoption, which it's likely to, because why wouldn't you use a service like that if you were on the job market? Then the application numbers are only going to continue to rise, right? So it will no longer be just Netflix who are getting thousands of applications. It'll be the whole market's going to be flooded with applications. So then what obviously naturally happens is you're then going to have AI sifting through all of that and responding. So before you know it, you've got AI applying to jobs, being assessed and rejected by AI, sifting through the response. And we're not far away. We're there now, really, in terms. So I don't know what the step on from that is when you get into interviewing and things, but yes, that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly where we all are right now, is in a situation where it is hundreds minimum, maybe thousands, and then on the employee side, they're just spraying, and the answer is to spray more. And on the recruiter or the hire side, it's like it's even worse than it was last week. I need to even more step away as a human and let the tech tell me who are the top 10, 50 or whatever, and then I'll look at that. And then you look at that, but the system has been gamed at this point. And so the whole thing, but yet there's still people hiring and they're making probably worse decisions than before this, which is crazy.
Yeah, no, I think they are. I think in many ways they are making worse decisions because, as I said earlier, recruitment's broken. And so a lot of the automation and algorithms have been set up on a broken system. So we're finding a way to hire badly more efficiently.
Yeah, and we've seen there's a couple of companies like HireVue or Metrics that claim like, okay, set the CV and the cover letter aside. Now we're going to do an online assessment, like play a game or something like this to match your skills to the skills we're looking for. A couple of flags for me on these things is that they say backed by neuroscience, which you don't need to be a neuroscientist to say, what are you for sure? Really? Okay. And then secondly, it seems to dispense with the concept of experience because if now I'm just, trying to match a number system or play a little mind game or a trick on a piece of, it just doesn't seem like it's, again, really that important to the role if we're talking about human roles with experiences of negotiating deals and talking to people, whatever it might be. What are your thoughts about these new non-CV, non-cover letter kinds of approaches for assessment?
Well, I think they're pretty much a nonsense. I think that they'll end up being gamed with AI assisters on the other side anyway. So it could be asking a skill-based question that you quickly type into an AI assistant. It could be a custom GPT or whatever it is on your side of the fence, who then produces the answer that it knows the system wants to hear. So I really don't think that's a great opportunity. I do think that there are opportunities for the candidate experience to be improved through all of this, and that's what people need to be shooting for, right? When I've worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of job seekers at various points. And the biggest pain and frustration comes from things like ghosting, where you've applied or interviewed or spoken to somebody about something and never heard it before, or false hope, where you still think a role's open and it's actually not. Like, these are incredibly demoralizing experiences for people who are often already stressed and going through a difficult time. So the idea that through technology we could eliminate that so that nobody's ever left without feedback, nobody's ever left without a clear update, a Domino's pizza style recruitment dashboard where you can see exactly where your application's up to and when the next stage is going to be delivered, right? And so you know what's happening and some more visibility around it. I think in those areas we've probably got some really good stuff to go. And also at the moment, another big frustration I hear from people in transition is that they apply for a role using their CV, and then they're met with an ATS that asks them to fill out 2 pages of nonsense forms, basically copy and pasting exactly the same text they've just submitted on their CV into different sections of the ATS. Now, that has to be a thing of the past based on what already exists. I can't believe it's still going. But so I do think candidate experience-wise, transparency, updates, and even being able to, at the end of a process, in an automated way, catch some feedback from candidates on the experience itself, almost in a net promoter score type fashion, so that you can leverage data to improve candidate engagement. There's some cool things that can be had there, but automated interviews, no, I don't think that's one of them.
Yeah, I want to dig in on a couple of points there for sure. So, okay, so you had provided a link to a LinkedIn post by a person named Matt Elder, who says the problem isn't that AI will take our jobs, it's that what we're doing, the jobs that we're doing shouldn't even exist from a talent acquisition perspective. And you just touched on some so you made a nuance there, is that you said AI good for like showing you where you are, keeping the process moving, taking the anxiety out of the candidate's time. Because I always tell candidates time moves differently for you than the employer. And you're thinking, oh my God, I haven't heard from him in 12 hours. And they're thinking, that was fast. I've got a lot of stuff to do. I'll let the candidate know when I can. But then using AI, and don't do the interviews and all that kind of stuff. And I have a quote on that one. It was from an IBM article that basically said that since people are so comfortable using ChatGPT in their daily lives, that they should also, and very likely will be comfortable interviewing with the GPT system. And I was like, no, that's not true at all. I think that if I were talking to a GPT, I think it's disrespectful to me, as a candidate, in all honesty. I would be. But then you mentioned some places like showing the progress, where AI might be useful. And I think you're on the path to doing it better, right? And so if we look at that article, which we can put the link into or send it out, but it basically says, look, talent acquisition has got us doing a bunch of tasks that aren't really great for humans to do anyways. Maybe you could expand a little bit on which ones of those to get rid of, which ones we keep and enhance.
Yeah, well, anything, as I said, scheduling, responses, these types of things. I think this is going to provide a much better experience than humans can, and I think that's fantastic. It'll pick up the leaky bucket of candidates as well, and make sure that you're not missing people later into the process and things like that. I mean, one thing I'm conflicted on, and I'd love to know what you think of this actually, Toby, is I've heard and read about the fact that AI applications are now such a challenge for hiring teams that they've got scanning software that can tell you what percentage of the document was AI created. And I don't know whether Morag knows or from the business school side, whether this is, I know this has been applied in education as well, is, understandably when people are submitting dissertations and the like, right? Now, that technology that's been used in education is actually also being used to scan CVs and look out for people that are using AI. But the thing I find bizarre about that, and we spoke a little bit about this at the alumni event, is if people are going to have to be using these types of tools and coming up with integrated technology solutions to do their job on the daily, why are people seeing it as a negative that they've used these tools to make the application in the first place?
Yes, well, and we've had a touch on that discussion before, and I'll tell you a real story. So Anthropic, which is one of the biggest AI companies in the world, they make Claude, for example, so it competes with ChatGPT. So they're hiring like crazy. And somebody said to me, you know, they have on their application, do not use AI during this process, but we demand a cover letter or something that had to be created from scratch. And which would indicate it's a huge conflict, because clearly they're in the business of selling these tools and creating them, but at the same time they're forbidding them to be used.
Yeah, mad.
Like it's cheating or something, so it's like, okay, well, but then I think there's some industries. We talked about gaming industry last time, that in the gaming industry, they're like, yeah, this is great. More the better. Go for it. Because I think there's such a strong adoption in a sense of this just makes you faster and more competent at work. Yeah. What are we going to say? Not don't use it to get the job when we tell you you have to be good at it to do your job.
Yeah, it's a really bizarre paradox, I think, that we're seeing on that side. A really bizarre paradox. But look, ultimately, where we need to move to is, and this is common sense, but unfortunately, in hiring, common sense is far from common based on my experience. Is the common sense dictates that the assessment and the interviewing should be as closely aligned to the role itself as possible. So if you think about traditional interviews of two people just sat around a desk, kind of broadly window dressing, sometimes lying to each other, that's not really a great start of a relationship, no matter what role you're going into. What you'd want is some kind of process that was tailored to uncovering the skills required for the role that they were going to go and do. I mean, the amount of software developers that get rejected at interview when actually they're working remote from some basement downtown somewhere and don't need to be able to tell stories or remember their previous achievements to do their job. Like you're assessing somebody that's doing a job over this side of the spectrum using, techniques from this side. So I'm hopeful that technology can play a role in actually getting to the point where it's going to be more tailored and specific, so that everybody's experience actually helps them demonstrate their skills and put their best foot forward.
Yeah, agreed. But let me push on that just a second, just to get your thoughts. But so in the previous conversations, we've determined that that the AI will largely remove low cognitive tasks, correlate, summarizing all, this kind of thing. And what will cause an increase in the activities in which we, as human employees, in which we engage with more human skills like negotiation and communication and leadership. How can an AI system quickly determine your leadership skills, for example? And these are all business people on this call here who are not necessarily electrical engineers or nurses, and very procedural in their ability and value that they create. Instead, value is created for business people through integration and strategy creation, leadership, understanding team dynamics, projects, long-term relationships among different factors and things like that. How do you envision AI quickly being able to fix that?
Yeah. So in terms of leadership skills, there's a data element to it. So you could get AI to cross-reference somebody's CV with the performance of the companies during their tenure.
Right.
So pulling actual evidence-based data of the performance of those companies. This person was Chief Marketing Officer of XYZ Inc. for 3 years. And it's like, what were the core growth metrics demonstrated from a marketing and brand point of view during their tenure? You could do that. You could, from a leadership point of view, you could say how many people that this person has managed have been promoted in the last 2 years or gone on to do leadership roles themselves. So there's an ability to look at a track record in a far more fact-based way to uncover the skills that you're looking to hire. That's how I would be thinking about it.
Yeah. And I know one of the proponents of using AI in the hiring process is to say, look, the AI is not biased like the human is. And there's no question that humans are biased, and they
Huge.
Yeah, and they tend to have this in the hiring process. There tends to be this human to human, like you said, an interview for 30 minutes or 20 minutes or something like this. And what's really happening there is it an honest, even, unbiased assessment of skills and experience, or is it more human? Does this person look like me, fit with my moral, just all of the things that have nothing to do with the job potentially. What are your thoughts about that being true, that AI can remove the biases from the hiring process?
Yeah, well, we are seeing this already, and I think this is exciting, right? So it can, as long as it's not actually further extrapolating pre-existing bias, which is one of the concerns that we need to work through, because depending on which data set it's using, there is an opportunity that it could take the pre-existing bias and actually amplify it further. But let's assume it's not doing that. How are people using it in a practical sense to remove bias from hiring? Well, one of the big ones, for example, is obviously the AI note takers using transcripts for interview. Okay. And this does a couple of things, because you can interrogate that transcript after the interview, so that if a hiring manager says, oh yeah, no, Toby wasn't right, they didn't have the marketing track record that we needed for this role, the AI could sense check that against the actual transcript and go, well, hang on a minute, there was some evidence here that they have done that part of the role, and there was some evidence here that they have done that part of the role. Because as you rightly say, what people tend to do is make a snap judgment in the first 5 minutes and then ask leading questions to back up their original snap judgment to prove they were right all along, and that they've still got their magic touch of being able to spot a winner very quickly, right? And a legendary gut instinct that all founders claim to have, but they never talk about the ones that go wrong, weirdly. Only ever talk about the legendary gut instinct with the ones that go right. So that's what happens. And so transcripts, like simple things like that, using transcripts post-interview to really test what the interviewers are saying and to make sure that fair play's been there. And you can obviously even get to the point where you're benchmarking a hiring manager's scorecard and then getting the AI using the transcript to benchmark the scorecard and to see whether there's any huge discrepancies there. So that's kind of cool. Like that's a good way to remove bias. The other thing that AI can do, and is doing already in ATS systems, is stripping any identifiers out from CVs on the way in.
Mm.
So, I mean, age discrimination is a massive thing that's going to affect all of us, and is very real. And a lot of people, for example, will have their date of birth in their CV, or others will have things like they'll have an email address that's Toby Velt 1956 at hotmail.com, right? And it's like, come on, let's get that out. So that's another thing that AI can do, which is really cool, to deliver a more to remove bias in terms of the assessment phase and the selection phase. Is it can remove dates of birth, it can remove email identifiers, graduation dates, and anything that could be an identifier to a protected characteristic, so that when people are then reviewing the profiles, there's only the last 15 years, for example, of each candidate, and there's none of those particular identifiers still in there. So that would be positive, wouldn't it? I think.
Yeah. It reminds me of a few stories. And Morag, we should include that video from Financial Times where it talks about, in the UK at least, and in other developing nations, the low birth rate is causing half the workforce in the UK will be 50 plus.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely mind blowing to even fathom. But that's the case because people need employees and workers and skilled labor. So unbelievable. Now, it did also remind me of, I never did this, but I was asked by an insurance company about 2 years ago. He says, we hire these agents, these insurance agents, and they go to these field offices, and they're right out of university. And we have, there's a lot of them, thousands of them, and we have various levels of success. Could you create a system that would predict who's going to be successful and where? I was like, well, okay, that's an interesting challenge. And I said, well, if there's enough of them, and it sounds like there's 10,000s of them, you could look at their performance in an AI machine learning supervised learning way. You could say, hey, these people that had this background were successful in Omaha and were not successful in New York City. But these people with this background were more likely to be, that kind of, so because you have a history of success and no success versus these new recruits, you could put together a machine learning system that could, at some level, predict success in role, but only in a situation where you have enough data and enough history, because it's supervised by the history of, did it work, or what was the performance afterwards. And then you kind of just take the human is still there, but now you've got a percolating pool of candidates that's already set up for success in that particular location, acknowledging that geography makes a difference in performance. If it does, it very likely could. And so we never did the project, but it was an interesting thought experiment that I think would work. And that's perhaps another way you could get AI into the hiring process.
Yeah, well, we've done a bit of that on the predictive analytics, and done various projects on it. The challenge is twofold with it. One, it doesn't take into account external candidates typically. So if you've got an underperforming commercial team, you're basically looking at who's performed okay out of an underperforming team rather than looking at who's the best possible solution for this problem. And the other thing is, from a diversity point of view, it causes a challenge sometimes, because if you have a non-diverse team in the first place that predicts people from exactly the same background are going to be the best, then again, it doesn't lead you to cognitive diversity typically, or a broader skill set. So there's definitely something in it. Interestingly, when we ran that process, just to share a quick anecdote on it, it was looking at commercial teams. So the organization we worked with had 1,000 sales and commercial people doing a similar type job, right? All over Europe. And we analyzed the top 10 performers to try and find the magic formula, right, using data. And what we found was that there was 5 men, 5 women. So it's like, okay, gender's clearly not a predictor of any type. There were 7 different ethnic backgrounds out of the 10. So obviously that there was some really good diversity there, but nothing that you could use to hire across. Education was varying. We then looked at behavioral background, and within the top 10 commercial performers, at one end you have people whose behaviors were super analytical and they were very process driven, and that's how they were winning loads of work. Completely at the other end of the scale, we had kind of more fast and loose, sharp talkers, sharp suit types who were moving and shaking, never used the CRM, always getting in trouble for compliance, but were doing enough deals to keep their job. Like, we had that whole kind of spectrum of people, and the age range was 55 to 65 in the top 10 performers. So they're looking at this thing going, this is impossible. In fact, out of that one, though, there was only one thing that was found to be an identifier of commercial success in that business, and that was all of them over-indexed on resilience. That was the only attribute versus the rest of the company that we could really hang our hat on. And so then we started going, okay, do we include grit tests? Do we include resilience-based assessment of some type? Do we look for people that have got a track record of overcoming hurdles, either personally or professionally? Because it was the only one single identifier after weeks and weeks of work that we could come up with.
Wow. All right. That's very telling. Okay, let's take a quick pause and see if we have any questions from the group.
We had a couple, and there's been an interesting train of discussions. Can I send my AI bot or avatar to my interview? And then can my AI bot or avatar do my job for me? So some of the things actually that we've been talking about. But there was one comment in from Santiago that I want to pick up on, because it loops right back to what you were saying about an overemphasis of AI loop resulting in a more analog process for some. And Andrew, this one's for you predominantly. If the majority of the job market is hidden, as we know it is, most of us do still believe in some way that networking-based job search approach is going to bear fruit. To what extent is AI impacting that part of the hiring process, as opposed to perhaps the more volume-driven, traditional apply online part of the process.
Yeah, so very timely. There was some data published this week. I'll share the link in the follow-up because I can't remember for the life of me which marketing agency it was that produced it. It's still the case. The hidden job market, as it sometimes gets described, is still the biggest opportunity, particularly for leaders accessing opportunities. And it said something like, if you are referred into a role, you're 42% more like your 42% likelihood of interview. If you apply for a role, you're 2% likelihood of interview. If you're an internal candidate, you're 25% likelihood of interview. So the network in thing is still and always will be, a great way to get introduced to opportunities and to network and have opportunities. The AI opportunity here for job seekers is obviously on the outreach side. So, if there are 10 CEOs that you'd love to have a coffee with, traditionally sending a cold email, cold message to them is going to be a low hit rate. But using AI, you can, tailor it in a way that you can really nail down what we believe are the important pain points in their business right now. We can nail down, their personal style. You can get AI to review a transcript of the podcast that they've been on and find out what's important to them. And so tailoring your outreach to get those networking opportunities to then get referred into either organizations or uncover things that haven't been advertised that are real needs for those people. That's where I think it could be a big plus. On the can the bot interview for me thing is actually a more serious question than it sounds. So one of my TA contacts uploaded a video that went viral recently of her interviewing someone that was concealing their identity on a video call. So they did a video interview and they had some suspicions about this individual based on behavior, but the man in the video interview wasn't the man undertaking the interview. It was a totally different identity. And what they asked was for them to put their hand in front of their face, because apparently when you do that, like the filter or whatever that they were using would become available. So I wonder actually whether the more this goes on and the more people are using AI agents to help answer interview questions, whether we might actually see a shift back to more face-to-face interviews. And we seem to always have this interesting societal paradox that the more digital the world gets, the more actually we lean human at the same time as well. I know when we were speaking, I find that socially really interesting. Like a lot of my mates are into lake swimming and meditation and camping in the jungle or whatever, right? Like the most basic human endeavors possible. We're really leaning into that the more digital that our world gets, and I find that fascinating. So I reckon face-to-face interviews are going to be back. I think they're going to be back big time because it's the only way to fully protect yourself against that type of fraud or challenge.
Yeah, interesting, Andrew. Thank you. Toby, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, and I've heard also stories of people doing these interviews and getting hired, and then this other person shows up. Like the whole thing was a complete sham. And then I've also heard that many, maybe most jobs on LinkedIn are like phantom jobs. They're not real jobs. They're curious to understand the market interest in this role or what the current pay range might be for this role. So they interact with people, but they never offer and give a job, which only erodes the trust of the people applying for work. And then you've got a larger portion of undocumented jobs that are available only through communication of networking or something like this, which is a less effective, less quick, less way of understanding where digital technology was supposed to expose us to the best job in the world immediately and all that. And it's completely failed us in that sense now that it's been overrun by job seekers. And, we're back to where we started. The system is broken and both sides are at this arms race trying to figure it out. And we're just pushing ourselves to a more analog in-person kind of experience from people we know through weak ties, which again, is highly inefficient.
I know certainly when we're thinking about that AI enables you to apply quicker to more things, and then it's reviewed by AI. It's sort of this hiring loop that includes no humans. And it puts me in mind of, we can be, as job seekers, we sometimes then feel, okay, great, I can do more quicker. But then that doesn't solve that pain point of then you get an AI response, a response back from not a human, and you sort of think, well, my feelings are hurt now because no one looked at all the work that I did. And it's sort of interesting. I think the pain points, they're not going to solve them. We're just going to feel hurt in a different way, that there are no humans involved in the process, which will push us much more towards that face-to-face interviews, face-to-face conversations, that human component of, can I sit next to this person to work for 9 hours a day? Still remains the ultimate measure of success in the hiring process, right?
Yeah. And, my daughter is looking for her first job, real job. And I was trying to explain to her that, under the circumstances of what we're talking about, you apply for hundreds of jobs and that means you get hundreds of rejections, saying, look, thank you for your application. We reviewed it and we decided to go in another direction with a different, the language says you're not good enough, basically, which, that's a lot of rejection for someone who's just trying to get out there for the first time and get that first job. You feel really like, I don't have any value in the system. No, I applied to 100 jobs or 1,000 jobs and I got 990 rejections. What does that do to you? So increasing the amount of applications increases the number of rejections, which as a human makes you feel even, a little bit lower. And
Yeah.
you're not interested in going to have lunch with somebody, because that would be even more painful to take that in person when somebody says, yeah, we're moving to a different candidate.
Mm.
Okay, now I do want to add one more point, and then before we go to the general Q&A, but before I do that, let me ask Andrew, and I know that people want to get very specific here. Is there any 3 to 4 tips, suggestions that in this broken system in which we operate today that you would give to candidates and on the hiring side to try to make the best of it, I suppose?
In the broken system we're in today, yeah. So tips leveraging technology or general tips?
Anything you have, because even if it's like avoid technology and just get out there for coffee might be a good tip.
Yeah. So look, we talk a lot, and in the book and in general, about if you are in a job search situation, you need to become the CEO of your job search. That's the way to think about it. And when we were coaching lots of people who were going through job search, the first thing we used to do was to check them into job advert rehab. We were like, stop getting up every morning and applying for 20, 30 jobs. It's the most demoralizing thing possible. It's the lowest possible hit rate. As you rightly said, Toby, it's constant rejection. And the danger, particularly if you've been laid off, right, which is, as anyone on this call will testify to if they've been involved with it, is, a really painful, hard change to take. It's a grieving process. It's proven to be a grieving process emotionally. So if you've been laid off and then all you're doing is getting more data and rejection on top of that, you can enter into what we call the jabs, which is like a job acquisition burnout syndrome, where you're already low on confidence, and then you're getting more rejections. And so then the interviews that you do have, you're not performing very well because we're all feeling like crap throughout this entire thing. And then so you get more rejections, and it's almost like the longer you're on the job market, the less likely you are to get hired. And that's a horrible truth that lots of people live every day. So how do we break through? That's the question. Well, as I said, you've got to become the CEO of your job search. And that involves using your business skills on the problem and making it a business challenge rather than it feeling like a personal challenge. So we would look at a multi-channel go-to-market approach. So you'd want kind of 5 prongs of attack. You want to be working with headhunters and recruiters in your space. You want to be working with your existing network. You want to be doing direct outreach to your dream employers and the people that you'd most want to work with, and get after them directly with some very tailored kind of approach. You want to be using LinkedIn, whether that's, you know, creating some content, doing some personal branding, and of course job adverts. But job adverts themselves where we would recommend you spend the least amount of time. So working those 5 channels, having almost a scorecard that relates to those channels every week, and project managing the thing, and having activities and streams going in those channels, which can now be augmented by technology and are made more efficient via technology at each stage. That's how you've got to do it. And the other thing you've got to do is, you know, as part of the CEO, is to maintain a routine. Because for the mental side of it, the more you can treat it as a job. So getting up, you know, we even used to get, during the pandemic, get people to do fake commutes, right? Like we'd be like, right, just get out of your house for 20 minutes, walk to the nearest coffee shop, grab a coffee, and then walk back in, but almost walk back into your house as if you're there to start your day's work. Mentally, the worst thing you can do is to be getting up 2-3 hours later and staying in your comfies all day and surfing the job adverts. That is just the painful way to go. So yeah, that's it. Multi-channel approach, become the CEO of your job search. That's the best philosophy, and that's what tends to help people get hired and avoid the jabs, which is an awful place to be.
Yeah, wow, that's great. That's excellent advice. And you know, so little of it is about getting on LinkedIn and saying, what were the jobs posted overnight? I'm going to apply to them all, because, you know, that half are fake. You're going to get rejected from the other half, and you're going to feel worse, and the cycle continues.
Well, the trouble with the job adverts, just on that bit, yeah, I don't know what percentage exactly is fake, but there is definitely a large percentage that aren't tangible opportunities. So sometimes it will be organizations looking to fill their database up. Other times, as you said, Toby, it will be people looking at, you know, salary benchmarking. Other times it will be cheeky cash short startups looking for free consulting because they'll put up a chief product officer role in a particular part of the tech market, and then they'll meet them all in the next couple of weeks and then cancel the requirement, having, you know, kind of sucked their brains out for the interviews that they've had, and then go off and, you know, it's free consulting for scrappy tech startups, loads of that going on. And sometimes when a HR team raises a opportunity that's already promised to somebody internally, the system automatically pushes that out via the job boards anyway. So when you create the job, it's auto advertised, even though they know, you know, that Sarah in marketing is going to be moving into that role next week anyway. So there's definitely a large percentage that aren't legit and aren't very good opportunities.
Yeah, yeah. Let me add. So somebody I know they were at Meta, and they were interviewing, and the company hiring said, you know, your activity on LinkedIn is a huge factor for us. And I was like, what do you mean your activity on LinkedIn? So they were looking at how often you posted. Was it unique? How many people looked at it? I mean, it was like judging your interaction with that particular social platform was an important metric. And I had never thought of it like someone else would be judging what I do on LinkedIn if I post a thought of the day or something. And then how many people think that that's an interesting thought, then that's a benefit. So it's a weird way of thinking about LinkedIn. Let me do this. This is a little different. Let me ask anybody in the group, you can put your hand up. Do you have any other suggestions, tips, or tricks for job applicants or on the hiring side that you want to share with the group that you found useful? In the spirit of LBS, we won't do any cold calling, or maybe we will. No, let's see. Oh, there we go, Sarah.
Hi. I think I completely agree with
we
LinkedIn.
Can't hear you. Let me do the.
Can you? I can hear you, Sarah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sorry, I turned the volume down. I think it's completely really insightful on the LinkedIn specifically, especially as I'm seeing some comments, but all of you are now could be thinking, oh, she's looking for a job. So I think the best part, or I think how things work is, I mean, I'm really the person who goes and networks because of the value of the conversation. I'll never be the person who will score a job through the network. I've told myself that. But I do know that when you interact, or if you know that there's a person you know or have some sort of connection who are expecting to have your CV, there's a better response there, or there's an open mind as compared to if you are just part of the pool somewhere. So I have written and rewritten and researched to say how the ATS is going to take and drill through my CV. But I think if you know or had some conversation with a connection who's receiving your CV is probably, but it's hard because you see jobs and then you go with them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. And I will say one good thing about LinkedIn nowadays is that if you go to a company or something, I'll say, hey, you know, 3 people, or you're connected lightly through, you could some way. And this is advice I was giving my daughter, was like, if you want to work for a particular company, see who works there and see if any of them know me, or because she's like early 20s. She doesn't have a connection or a network that's of any value, really. So it's like, just find somebody in there. Not that you're going to get to the hiring manager per se, but that stat of being referred in many companies like Amazon or Google, for example, if somebody's referred internally, they're external, but they refer you from the system, they have a little tool in the portal, they get a potential cash bonus. And so they may not know you. And like, people would come to me all the time and say, look, I'm interested in this job. You're in my network. Oh, and I said, okay, let me talk to you for 30 minutes, get to know you a little bit, and then I'll refer you in, and that will improve your odds, and it possibly puts cash in my pocket. And that, of course, just more than, 20 times, I get, 2% to 40% increases your odds of getting a look or an interview. So
I saw an interesting thing this morning. This is an event I usually attend, and there's this group of women. And somebody mentioned that there was a very young 20-year-old guy who attended the session with us on some executive level session. And he was saying, I'm looking for a job. So who can help? So there's so many people who came forward to help him. But because thinking from a very young person's perspective, it's scary to go into these areas and share that you're looking. But I thought, oh, wow, that's a brave move. But now people were trying to help him.
yeah, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to put their hand up and throw a comment out for us? Okay, we'll let that go. And then I don't see
Santiago.
Santiago, yeah.
Hey, hello everyone. Thank you so much for your input. Hey, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Toby and Maura. I think things are changing because employee referral programs don't work anymore. A lot of employees are referring my friends, myself, and the CVs are not even being looked at. And I think it's something different. Things that are working better is you are in your gym or fitness studio or in a bar or at LBS and start talking with a weak link, a person that doesn't know you or have heard of you. And that might be a more powerful introduction or referral than through a structured referral program. And hard links don't work anymore. Like for me, I spoke with people that I've worked with in the last 5-10 years, and even if they are referring me into open jobs at their organizations, I'm not getting job interviews. I'm getting job interviews through other channels. Through my experience is saying what traditionally was working right now in the current job market is not really working. And what is working better for me is making a lot of noise on LinkedIn, engaging with people, being visible, attending networking events, industry events. And by attending events, people know of me, and I've gotten some phone calls from executive recruiters that I didn't know, but the executive recruiters that know me and I had connected with in the last 2 years don't call me back. So it's very interesting. my perception or what I'm sensing is different to the best practices or suggestions that people like Andrew or other career coaches are telling me. Sorry, I'm a little raising a different viewpoint or experience.
So Santiago, thank you for sharing that. Let's be very specific. Now, where are you finding success? Is that networking events in the London area? Is it, and what kind of events are these, and what are you doing at these events that causes this?
So I'm targeting senior executive technology roles, meaning chief technology, chief innovation, chief digital officer, and so on. I'm attending those events. In some events, I'm a panelist. In some private events that I get paid for to be a panelist, and I'm attending. Some recruiters are there, or some CEOs, some investors are there, and I'm having conversations with them. These are new people that I've never spoken with, and I have more chances or better chances speaking with new people than with the existing people that I already know, hard links. So weak links, meaning new people that I didn't know, are opening some doors into interviews rather than the people that I already know that I ask for a employee referral through their employee referral program. That has not worked at all for me. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit of against what typically a career coach would tell you. And I have a feeling that the job market is saturated with a lot of people that are getting unemployed because of AI, because of high interest rates, because of multiple reasons. And so we are all competing with each other, and you need to find new ways to differentiate yourself. And I'm going back to basics, marketing myself as a product, making noise on LinkedIn and at events. Good noise, meaning building my personal brand and connections.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And when you do this, do you announce to the world you're looking for work, or you just present yourself as a subject matter expert and they come up to you and say, hey, would you ever think about working here or there?
Good question. I don't have the open to work green banner turn on LinkedIn. It's only turn on for recruiters and hiring managers. Occasionally, once every 1 or 2 weeks, I post something about, hey, I've been doing this type of project. I'm looking for new business projects, so business problems to solve on LinkedIn. I post that. Sometimes that helps, but I'm not openly telling the whole world because that sounds desperate, and I don't want to sound desperate. I want to be strategic.
Desperate's not a good look. Okay, so thank you, Santiago. We've got a bunch of hands up now. This is very, very interesting, very helpful. Wenjing, let's go over to you.
Thank you. So yeah, I think I'm taking a similar approach, as in prioritize myself. I think lots of the suggestions that we mentioned there, networking, direct reach out to search firms, finding roles, etc. To me, it sounds like is product distribution or product marketing strategy, and that's the different ways of marketing yourselves. The other way I'm trying to look at on another angle is the product itself, the product development itself, and trying to improve myself as a product offering that can truly differentiate myself to the others. So if we just look at the product development as well as product distribution separately, I'm really keen to find out, where I should, to avoid burnout as well. I want to kind of prioritize the most effective way of product improvement as well as product distribution. So I'll give you one quick example. I think personally, product development myself, I'm doing some course on my related field. I'm also trying to, actually one way I'm using, I'm not sure if it's effective, I'm just testing out. It will be good to hear your thoughts about writing on Substack. Because I think one way that helps me to consolidate my learning, i.e. improve my product, and two, potentially can differentiate myself when it comes to product distribution. So that's one creative way I think might work, but I'm not sure it's a lot of work itself in that. And so one feedback on that one, if you can. And secondly, you know, if you have to kind of, I know you shouldn't be like ranking all this product offering channel, where would you suggest us spending more time on? So that's my two main questions. Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. Andrew, I'd love to get your thoughts as the person, as the product.
Persons to products are absolutely the right mindset, I would say, Benjing. That's exactly how you want to be thinking about it. People, when they hire us, they're not hiring us. What they're doing is buying a future of some type, right? Like they're in some kind of challenge at the moment, and by hiring us, they're trying to get to a better place. That could be growth, that could be transformation, that could be turnaround, that could be survival, frankly, right? So they're buying a future. And what you're hitting on here is really key, which is most leaders talk about what they've done rather than talking about what they've solved or what they can solve. And so, you know, this is ultimately, we would call this a PVP, right? A personal value proposition. And it is very much a phenotype exercise of understanding your audience and then crafting a personal value proposition that meets the needs of that audience, that's very focused on them. And particularly on LinkedIn profiles, your about box shouldn't really be about you if you're trying to attract opportunity. It should be about what you solve for the people that land on it. And you'll see a lot are written in that way, and it's very powerful. So a little mnemonic that we use to think about how you craft a PVP that cuts through is pitch. And we created this as part of the book, PITCH. So this is how you can create a PVP. So the P for pitch is pain. So what pain do you solve? Having a line on that. The I is interesting blend. Every single person on this call will have a random interesting blend. We all do. Yeah, it may be an interesting blend from an industry perspective, maybe an interesting blend in terms of the countries you've worked in. It may be an interesting blend in terms of you might have done some pivots in your career, right? Like I'm a reformed accountant. And so my interesting blend is that, you know, I've gone from finance into talent and careers. So that's the I. T is track record. So evidence of where you've solved that pain and put your interesting blend to good use. C is core values. So more the human side of your values. And then H is about habits. Because what everybody understands is actually our habits, our own personal systems are what delivers growth. So if you imagine pulling all that together, I could say, hi, I'm Andrew, and the pain that I solve is to help people unlock hidden talent opportunities they didn't know existed. The interesting blend I bring is not only being a reformed accountant, but having spent 20 years on both sides of the hiring equation. My track record is growing exec search firms of up to 100 people in 20 countries worldwide and building a online audience that delivers 1 million views a month. And my core values are around challenging the norm, sticking up for when I view injustice, and operating with integrity. And the habit that really sets me up for delivering all of that for you is an insatiable curiosity. I love making sure I understand how things work and looking under the bonnet of anything. I never just let things be. I'm always really curious as to what's driving particular outcomes. So that's me, right? PITCH, nice kind of rounded PVP. Well worth you putting some time into that.
Yeah, amazing. I wrote that down. That's brilliant. And we'll share that, I'm sure, with everybody. But this is an AI session. So I was curious if you thought about, are there any ways AI can help you promote that message? Because I think one of the big challenges is, yes, you have a wonderful pitch story. How do I get that in front of the people that matter?
Yeah, well, I think content is the way. I think Substack is a really interesting play, by the way. Really, really interesting. Because my frustration, I'm still a big LinkedIn fan. I was a LinkedIn change maker, part of all of their media campaigns and all of that stuff, and I've built an audience on there. But my frustration is that it has, of course, become more and more social media and less thought leadership orientated. It's an inevitability. And I don't mind that. It's nice seeing what's going on in my contacts' lives and things, but it's not as powerful for thought leadership. Whereas Substack's still absolutely there. So I think that's a really interesting play. As you said, it is a lot of work. I'm sure that AI can help with some of that work, but I also think in order for you to get full value from that work, if you are publishing on Substack, I'd be taking those longer form articles And then what you can do is put that into a content generator that will create you 10 LinkedIn posts out the back of it as well. So that for one article, you're actually getting 11 bits of content rather than just piecemeal creating thought leadership. So that's a really nice tip. The repurposing of long form into short form works really well.
Yeah.
Right. That's my next step as well. Sorry, just a quick one on the Substack. Is it worth holding off till you build a good list of contents before you start publishing it, or you can start publishing it whenever you've done a few? I'm at a holdout period at the moment.
I know it's a little bit chicken and egg, right? But personally, I would just say get going. And part of that is that once you get going, you will get feedback and further insights from all these channels that will further help you develop more quality content. Experimentation is key. So I think, yep, done is better than perfect. Get it out there, see what happens, and iterate.
Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Amazing. We've got more hands up, which is also great. So Layla, let's go to you. Oh, still muted.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you got.
Yeah, thank you so much for this session. It's been great. So just to give a little bit of background as to why I joined. So I am someone who's mostly on the recruitment side. So basically my background is in banking. So I started off as in the investment banking division at Morgan Stanley. And through that, I got very involved in graduate recruitment. So that's when I learned how they sort of do it. You know, you're sort of split into schools, you get given batches of CVs, and then you help the company select. And I've been doing that throughout my career. So, you know, at the World Bank now, IFC specifically. And so we still do that. And so I do attend quite a few LBS events, and I work heavily with students. And as LBS know, usually recruitment is split between structured programs and non-structured programs. And what I seem to find is when I attend AI speaking events, a lot of the discussion seems to be around how AI is impacting the non-structured hiring. So the experienced hires, you know, people wanting to make career changes or lateral moves. So I'm quite keen to understand or to get your views on how you think it's impacting graduate recruitment, because from where I'm sitting, we obviously know that AI is there. You know, you see HireVue do some of the initial sort of recruitment, but we're still getting the traditional graduate recruitment process of you're getting batches of CVs. So you are human and you are helping with the recruitment. And so when younger people come to me, and a lot of them are LBS, either from the early careers program or the MIF, which is where I graduated from, when they ask me about how do you think AI is impacting recruitment, I say to them, look, it's there, but you know, the top recruiters, at least the ones that I know of, they're still relying on humans. But I would love to get your view on what has sort of changed before the CVs get to us, because perhaps it has. I'm not privy to that. I just get the batches. And just one more point, because I thought it was very interesting, Andrew, when you mentioned that, you know, you submit an application and then you upload your CV, and then you have to copy the same things onto the application form. I mean, as an applicant, I remember when I was applying for graduate jobs, that was a headache. But now sitting on the recruitment side, it seems to me to make sense, because if I am recruiting you, I can't see what you've put in your application form, because then I might get access to your date of birth, your nationality, etc. So I have to get the PDF that you've uploaded, and then the things on the application form, I suspect, is maybe for ATS systems to filter through. I don't know. I would just love to get your views, but yeah, thank you so much, and sorry that was a bit long-winded.
No, at all. It's very interesting, Layla. Can I just ask you a quick question in return, because I'm genuinely fascinated by this. Are you seeing graduate recruiting continuing at the same levels, and do you expect it to continue at the same levels? And the reason is that as a dad whose children will be entering the workforce in about 10 years, I wonder about what the demand will be for people with no experience with, the power of what technology can do. So I'd just love to hear what you're seeing and what you're expecting on the graduate side.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is still continuing. I mean, the numbers have reduced, but it is still, probably number one, number two recruitment campaign priority for these graduate recruiters. And in terms of experience, I didn't believe it before when I was an applicant when they say no experience required. But on the recruitment side now where I'm sitting, it's actually true, but that means it's very different. So when I'm working with the analyst program, so that's entry level, you just finish your undergraduate program, we don't expect any experience, but because employers seeing that it's so competitive, they've now gone and instead of relying on university students, they try and reach them at the sixth form level, at the secondary school level. So then people sort of get these mini internships and insight programs on their CV. So then if sort of your child is only doing that at university, they will be priced out from an experience perspective, but that's what experience means. And on the associate level, so this is what I get mostly with the people I work with at LBS, for associate programs, especially for banking, investment banking, like the Morgan Stanleys, the JP Morgans, they want people who have no experience in banking, So usually if you are at LBS and you're trying to get on an associate investment banking program there and you have banking experience, as a recruiter, I would say, well, why didn't you get promoted to associate? Or what happened there? What's going on? We prefer to sort of get people that maybe came from McKinsey or came from a different type of finance and want to go into investment banking. So it is still very much, a priority. One of the biggest things I have seen, however, and I think LBS can speak to this too, is that where before all the applicants would go online, so let's say Morgan Stanley, you go online and you find the graduate programs. Now they've stopped advertising there and they advertise only directly at their target schools. So, for example, this recruitment cycle, you couldn't find the Morgan Stanley Associate Program on the website, but you can find it on the LBS Careers site. So that's one of the biggest changes I've seen when it comes to graduate recruitment.
Yeah, very interesting. More and more targeted. But
Yeah.
that's also reassuring to hear that it's, still viewed as incredibly important. And one of the key campaigns, because that's my fear is, I can see all of us who've got experience, our knowledge will still be required as AI continues to be rolled out in organizations. But for entry levels, it's like, where are those gaps there? And are people still going to be nourishing the next generation? And the fact that so far so good on that front's very reassuring. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Layla. I was just going to add to that. There is two sides to this entry-level employment story that people are afraid of AI or unsure. I'll just say unsure. One side of it is because we're removing low cognitive skills, there is very low interest or need for new young hires to come in because they don't have the experience, obviously, to do the higher level skills, and therefore no need, no interest. Scary place to be. And then everybody in the workforce is over 50 or whatever. It just gets crazy. The other side of that coin is highlighted in a document which we'll share from the Work Trend Index annual report. It was basically a love story that Microsoft wrote for agentic AI. And we talked about agents last time, but it basically says employers, the org chart of the past is going away, everything's changing. And so now what will happen is when we get a new hire, we don't need them to do the low cognitive skills that are typical of the first couple of years of employment, where they're going to immediately jump into a role where they manage multiple AI agents. And these agents perform particular business functions, and that will be their new role. So they elevate the employee immediately into a more strategic kind of set of activities. And we'll share this report out because there's some pretty interesting quotes in there. It's not a terribly long, it's like 10 pages. So we can jump into that, but let's do at least one more question on this or input from Jerome, and then we'll check out the chat Q&A.
Hi everyone, hello from Paris once again. So I mentioned one topics about diversity, because what I see on the AI front is basically creating a kind of standardization of profile, functions, processes, and so on, because everything needs to be structured and defined in a way. But the question is how you manage diversity, because at the end, what makes the difference between the businesses will be the people and the diversity they bring into this, because per definition is everything is the same if all the processes are the same and so on. At the end, you will end up in the zero profit zone, because every company will compete with the same standard process, the same product, the same people. And my question is how to manage this diversity, because diversity is scary because it's more risky than anything else. But at the end, what makes the difference in it. And if we take the luxury goods, for instance, you are ready to pay a high premium for something that is quite unique. And I was reading recently that LVMH is moving from this standard luxury good to go to a real high luxury items that only maybe 4 or 5 people can pay in the world, because that at the end what is a luxury.
Andrew?
Yeah, so I think I understand your point. Like the harmonization of it all could be a threat to diversity. But I think there's a general understanding now that echo chambers don't scale and echo chambers aren't innovative. And I think that's great. And there's lots of good books and studies and data to back this up. Rebel Ideas by Matthew Syed was the one that completely shifted my perspective on that debate. So as I said earlier, actually, I think in terms of removing bias and taking out all of the indicators and trying to put everybody on a level playing field, I'm kind of feel more confident that we'll get more diverse outcomes because we're removing the bias which has got in the way of diversity. Now, how do you then ensure that you're also getting innovation, because you're not just hiring the same group of people that everybody else is hiring is a broader talent strategy and challenge. But yeah, I think we'll be removing bias more than we'll be increasing it using some of these tools. That's my hope.
Yeah, I often see like a job description or something, and it's like, 20 years experience in the oil and gas, working for these 2 companies in this one city with I'm just like, don't you already have those people? I mean, it just seems like so specific to the people that are already there. It's a complete lack of diversity, both in the obvious protected class scenario, as well as the experience diversity of interdisciplinary activities of hiring somebody outside of the industry, for example. A crazy thought. You need to know the industry, all that stuff. I'm like, well, I don't know. But I think if AI could somehow peel apart the components that make a role successful and then reinvigorate the candidates to be presented that have that, and if a company's open to it, I think they would do well and succeed. But
that's really interesting, because I think you're onto something there. I think the reason people don't make more diverse hires is mainly to cover themselves in case it goes wrong, right? Not my fault, boss. I hired someone from the direct competitor who, has been in the industry for 10 years, This is also, by the way, why we see 14, 15 stage interview processes at times, because if 14 other people met them, it's not my fault if it goes wrong. So the fear within business of failure, I think, is driving a lot of these things. And if AI can produce data that can be lent on as the justification for the decision, that takes that kind of someone having to take the fall when it goes wrong element out, then that could reduce a lot of fear in these things. Most people, when you ask them about their best ever hire, will tell you about the lady in the coffee shop who they spoke to for 6 months, who one day they offered a job as office managers and now is their COO. Or, you know, the guy who sold them something one day and they said, wow, that was amazing, come and work for me. Right. Most people, when you ask them their best ever hiring story, will have that kind of anecdote if they've been in business for 20 years. And yet they then go out to market with the most prescribed list of requirements, looking for some like bionic human that doesn't exist quite often, even though they know the results come from thinking more laterally and being more creative. So can AI produce the data that allows them to cover their butts if it goes wrong and takes the politics out so they can be braver with hiring? That would be definitely something I could buy into. That would be exciting.
Yeah, but no, that will temporarily increase the pool size, which is what everybody's fighting against right now. Is we need to make the pool smaller so that human can look at 10 CVs, not 10,000. You know, and I've seen like 5 years experience deploying LLMs to the marketplace or something, something like, you know, like, okay, who wrote this? Seriously, I actually think half of these things are written by AI.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, and then you're like, okay, we're just out of the loop entirely. The AI is hiring more AI to talk to each other and waste compute cycles or something. I don't know, but
yeah, it's mad. And also, you know, another point in terms of diversity, statistically, women need to feel like they meet 90% of the requirements to apply. Men just over 60% of the requirements. So I quite often see job adverts with a, you know, firm commitment to diversity and inclusion written at the bottom of them, will have listed out requirements that would put off even the most confident of males, let alone the majority of females that are looking at the job ad. And it's like, come on. I think the more they can be focused on future predictive success, habits, skills, you want values alignment, but cognitive diversity. That's the magic. That's, if you're forming a team, that's what you're looking for. And we need to get job adverts reflecting that and hiring processes reflecting that too.
Yeah, right on.
It's a really interesting question actually that's come in that I think leads on really nicely from some of the things you're talking about, and also loops right back to the original conversation around AI hiring AI and what the candidate experience currently looks like, what it could be. Alexandra's been asking, like, how will AI impact the employer branding and candidate experience side of the recruitment process, other than I guess reducing the risk of being ghosted? Like, where else can you see it having a positive impact, Andrew, on the hiring process and the experience a candidate will have engaging with a company?
Yeah. Where else? Well, more tailored is for sure. From the outreach at the very start, I'd expect that to be a lot more tailored. At the moment, way too often, recruitment teams fall into the generic, and I moan at our teams for this all the time. So, you know, they'll write one in-mail script and then spam it out to 100 people to see if they can catch 10 of them and then take them through the process. Whereas what I think AI will be able to do will be able to analyze the profile more specifically and approach the individual with something that feels a lot more tailored, so that you're reviewing an opportunity through a very personalized lens and able to make a more informed decision rather than just reading a generic, you know, e-shot effectively that's been sent out via LinkedIn to 100 people. So I think the personalization part of the experience is good. As we said earlier, updates, avoiding ghosting, these types of elements, bringing some data into it, which I think is cool. And I think, you know, moving on even further than that, I think what's going to be really interesting is how people manage things like alumni and community and things like that. I think a lot of people, if you know, for example, we had Leda talking about Morgan Stanley earlier. If you know next year you're going to need to hire another 300 graduates, finding a way to leverage technology to create a community that appeals to graduates that you can then use for that moment rather than just going to market for graduates at that moment is going to be a really exciting opportunity. So yeah, as I said earlier, I think there's plenty of experience benefits that will be in there as well.
Yeah, let me just, I know we're kind of getting to the end. I just want to summarize a few things that I've learned from you today.